पुण्यम देशम हिमावतः परस्वे भारतम नमो भारती यत्र संति सत्यम धर्मम शीलम यत्र तिष्ठति tam desham bharatam namami. These lines from the ancient texts of the Rig Veda mean, I bow to that sacred land named Bharat, lying beside the Himalayas where the goddess of learning resides, where truth, righteousness and noble conduct abide. I bow to the land called Bharat. A very good morning to one and all. Namaskar, Adab. My name is Archita Sarangi, and it gives me immense pleasure to welcome you to the Oxford India Forum 2025. We are so pleased to have you here with us today in the historic Nelson Mandela Lecture Theatre at the University of Oxford, where the ideas are not simply discussed, they are born. The Oxford India Forum serves as a proud platform where India's story, in all its complexity and brilliance, finds a global stage. It was the famed historian Will Durant who said, and I quote, Mother India is in many ways the mother of us all. A 1.46 billion strong nation with one of the largest demographic dividends in the world, India is poised to be the fastest growing major global economy, leading the good fight of the global south. The Oxford India Forum, a flagship conference, is our tenacious yet humble attempt to bring critical conversations to this august gathering. Today, we embark on a journey across space, spirituality, economy, environment, diplomacy, law, innovation, and identity, all within one powerful day. This forum is a rare confluence of minds. From Dr. S. Somanath, under whose prolific chairmanship, India became the first country to successfully land a spacecraft near the south pole of the moon, to Rajiv Chandrasekhar, who has been critical in shaping India's digital frontier, from Gauranga Das, offering a moral compass in a multipolar world, to Ronnie Screwvala and Shashwat Goenka, redefining entrepreneurship for Bharat. Here today, at the Said Business School, we look forward to hearing from our esteemed guest, Sri Ajay Piramal, on what it takes to be a leader in the 21st century, along with Ms. Kali Puri, the Executive Editor-in-Chief of the India Today Group, who reminds us why women are the hub of the wheel of fortune for the world. As we begin today with Why Stop at the Moon and close with AI as India's strategic moment, let us recognize that what unites these sessions is not just ambition, it is purpose. This forum is not just a conference. It is a canvas of India's past glories, present aspirations, and future responsibilities. Over 40 speakers, 15 sessions, and 12 hours of reflection will help us grapple with one fundamental question. How can India rise responsibly and radically in the 21st century? We are grateful to every speaker and delegate who has traveled to be with us. We are especially grateful to the Confederation of Indian Industry, CII, for enlivening our forum with their presence. We extend our deep gratitude to our sponsor, Being Human, and partners for sharing our vision. And most of all, I personally extend my thanks to our student team, which has worked tirelessly for months with dedication and devotion. You've not just built an event, you've built a bridge between India and the world. As we look around this room, filled with scholars, diplomats, entrepreneurs, journalists, policymakers, and students, let us remember that we are not here to agree. We are here to imagine, to challenge, to build. So I urge you, ask the difficult questions, share original ideas, and carry forward the spirit of this forum beyond these walls. Because India is not waiting to arrive. India is already shaping the arrival of the world's future. On behalf of the entire Oxford India Forum team, I welcome you with folded hands and open hearts. Let the conversations begin. Jai Hind. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome a humble son of the soil of Kerala, Dr. Sridhar Panikar Somanath, to help us understand how ISRO reached where it has and tell us why India need not stop at the moon. The world and beyond is our oyster. Sir, please.
It's on the screen. Am I audible? Yes. Good morning, all of you. Good morning. Really an honor to be present at the Oxford India Forum. This is my first visit to UK and also to Oxford. I've been enjoying going around this place, meeting people, discussing things, trying to develop connects between people here and back in India. I'm very honored to be the first speaker today in this year's Oxford India Forum session. What I thought that I will present the journey of space and what we look for in the future has already been mentioned. Possibly I may take about 25 minutes to 30 minutes, and then if you have time, have some questions. One of the important things that recently captured the imagination of everyone is going for exploration. Going to moon, Mars, and other celestial objects have been always a dream for everyone. India is the one nation which sent the first craft to Mars and captured it perfectly in the orbit for the very first attempt itself and became very successful. And I think that story is all known to you. And moon mission has been going on for many years, and the journey of Chandrayaans 1, 2, and 3 is also been captured in the imagination of many people. So I will first start with that, and the Chandrayaan 3, which I had the fortune to be there as the chairman of Space Research Organization to look at that mission and then make it happen. Landing on the southern side of the moon with a very, very, very less budget, limited budget. I think this has captured the imagination of everyone. The way in which we engineered the mission and we were able to accomplish the mission very successfully, while there has been many attempts across the globe to go to moon and then still making difficult attempts. Now, because the landing on the moon has been always a difficult process, mission-wise, technology-wise. So it's a great honor for all of us to accomplish in India and then showcase this mission as one of the important missions for the country. I believe the whole journey of doing moon mission started while we had no capability to do moon mission, and that's the most important aspect. When we had a rocket called PSLV, which is a rocket designed to send spacecrafts of 1 ton class to Earth orbit, and with that rocket, we decided that one day we will go to moon. I think that's a great decision that we did in 2008, and that was an orbital mission, Chandrayaan 1. But it was an international collaboration with payloads coming from different countries and working across the globe, building and bringing payloads into that mission. And you know that Chandrayaan 1 actually achieved the perfect orbit insertion. It also did scientific missions which found water on the moon for the very first time. And it also sent a moon impact probe on the surface of the moon. And that the whole idea of an impact probe was given by none other than Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam while we were engineering that craft. And this mission has really started the whole program of moon missions. Technologically, it has been a great journey for us. And with a rocket like PSLV, going to moon was difficult. So we engineered a new approach, how to go to moon in steps, with keeping the mass of the craft very less and the propulsion and the fuel very, very less. And thus, that part of technology I don't want to describe to you. But this has really captured the imagination of many people. And doing missions at extremely low cost has come out of this. Chandrayaan 2, of course, started when we developed a new rocket called the Launch Vehicle Mark III. It had almost 4 times the capability of PSLV to put spacecrafts in orbit. And it was a time that we decided that we will have a lander to go to the moon. And that mission almost achieved it, but for the last phase of almost 300 meters, it had a glitch in that and we couldn't make the soft landing. But the orbiter did very well, and today we have so much of information coming out of Chandrayaan 2 And some of them includes understanding the moon terrain and pictures that came out of that mission. For example, the understanding of the moon regolith and how it evolved over time came out of the images from there. And today we know that the surface of moon is evolving with the inner material coming out on a progressive manner rather than filling up the top, which has never been known. And even the images of very high resolution. Today, the image from Chandrayaan 2 is what is used by many other nations for planning their moon mission. Even for us, for Chandrayaan 3, the Chandrayaan 2 image fed into the whole mission. And the Chandrayaan 3, of course, all of you know that we would have watched it across TV, YouTube, and everywhere. And this was one of the biggest event ever watched live for a space mission. I think people say that. In fact, I was not participating there. We were fully concentrating on the mission day. But then we came to know about it much later. And it made such an impact in the minds of young people, going there and landing perfectly. I would like to speak a little about the instruments that we built. I think this is very important. Just not going there and landing is important, but doing what science that will come out of it. And many of the instruments were built in India, not only in ISRO, but also across laboratories in the country. We collaborated with many labs, built those scientific instruments, which include understanding the regolith, understanding the atmosphere, looking at the mineral and elemental composition on the surface, looking at the moon cakes, etc., etc. And we had instruments in the orbiter, the lander, the rover, all of them. I think this is very unique in terms of building instruments and launching them at extremely low cost and very compact spectroscopic instruments we were able to build and develop within India. I think it's a really great thing. And also the rover, a very cute rover which just 30 kilogram in mass was able to come out of it, which you saw the animation there. But when we watched it live on the screen, it's coming out, it's really filled our hearts. But not only that it actually traveled across the moon surface for almost 100 meters, overcoming obstacles, potential hazards. Then it came out of it and then did fantastic measurements. Both the spectroscopic instruments were on board this lander. Sorry, the rover. The scientific outcome, I don't want to spend much of time because I don't have enough audience corresponding to that here. But then still, some of the finding, which includes understanding the moon atmosphere, which is more ionized there. And it has so much of information related to the communication infrastructure that we are likely to create in the future. And also on the regolith, the moon regolith, you know that it has a method to contain the heat within the surface of the moon. And we found out that the conductivity of the regolith is actually much, much lower than we originally expected. So possibility of finding water underneath is now a potential possibility because of these findings. Similarly, that the instruments, the spectroscopic instruments found out elemental composition on the moon. Today we know that the elemental composition on the moon is not very different from that of Earth. Maybe trying to tell us that moon came out of Earth sometime due to some asteroid coming and hitting Earth and then taking a part of it and then making it out into the moon. Possibly those theories will get proven over a period of time. And not only we did landing on the moon, but just on the day just landed, we decided that we are going to do further experiments with that craft. We actually started the engine once again by reprogramming the entire mission, which was not originally planned. We sent the new program, new algorithm on board, lifted off it a little bit and then landed again to demonstrate that it is possible to restart from there and then go out to some other place. And this was very excellent mission point of view, software point of view. And we also did the orbiter, which was moving around the moon to bring it back to Earth. Again, a program that we never envisaged in the beginning. And the whole algorithm development strategy to move it from that point to the Earth orbit was again executed very, very effectively, proving way for future human exploration on the moon. You can see the picture now, the picture of Chandrayaan 3 using the Chandrayaan 2 orbiter. Now you can see that there. So we are not lying, it's actually there. So you can be rest assured. Let me also go into another mission called the Aditya-L1, the mission to understand Sun, going on a point which is 3 times the distance of a moon from Earth. It's a Lagrangian point where if you put something there, it stays there forever. But it's not a one point, it's a region which is huge. And we have to put a spacecraft there and then make it orbit around it so precisely it has to be injected with very precision. And the travel took a few months of time. And the way which we are able to take it there and then inject it as precisely, talks about our capability of sensors, the mission planning, the computational capability to put such missions there. And again, the mission brought out scientific outcome, which includes the understanding of the sun, the coronal mass ejection, which is actually some of the inputs for predicting space weather. And this data is continuously coming, and we are expecting that this will work for next 5 years or so. Possibly you heard about a spacecraft called AstroSat. I don't know how many of you know about this. Like the Hubble, and many other, the Chandrayaan, many other observatory that the other US has put in space. We also did a humble experiment of putting a spacecraft in orbit to look at the universe. It is one of a type of an instrument collection where we are able to look at it in a multispectral way. Typically observations are done in one domain of spectroscopy. So you look at it as a region of light. But this span across X-rays, ultraviolet, visible lights, thermal imaging, and all of that. This is the first time that it has worked very well, and you can look at the type of outcome came out of it. Publications, PhDs, and the global and Indian connection that has created out of this scientific work. And we are having plans to put more such payloads. And possibly you may not ever know about the cost of it. So we have been able to do this mission, such an exciting mission with very, very limited budget. And this is what we see it as a possibility. And of course, on the Mars orbital mission, I mentioned about it, that today we have, because of the Mars orbital mission, the best of ever images of the Mars. The 3D images came out of this mission, and this is giving a lot of scientific outcome, not just images, but also the scientific data that came out of the Mars mission is now used globally by all the researchers. Let me get into another domain of what we want to do as a technology catalyst and how you really help these type of inspirational missions really feed into the space ecosystem. How do you really create a vibrant space economy, and what type of utilization of space activities that we are doing with respect to governance, society. I would like to spend a few minutes about that topic. Of course, all of you know about India. India is a vast country with 1.4 billion people, possibly going to reach up to 1.67 and stabilizing. Our economic demands are very, very high. The priorities are listed here. I don't want to spend time because of the shortage of time. The whole point is how space technology can really be useful in terms of helping the governance, helping the decision makers with regard to the resource utilization, climate mitigation, sustainable development, and improving the lives of the people. I think this has always been the very cornerstone of our activities in space. And many of the topics that we debate, discuss while we plan missions and building spacecrafts, instruments, applications, and working with governments has always been the stress on these topics, which talks about using natural resources very effectively, looking at the socio-economic development activities, quality of life, governance, helping the digital, especially the digital governance. In this, space cannot do everything. I think space can do something which includes collecting information and giving analytics that to the government, providing connectivity and communication infrastructure, the timing and location services, emergency communication, etc., etc. I think this, how you integrate this into the whole ecosystem has always been our discussion. Some examples I would like to quickly go through, which includes the supporting the SDGs goals. Here it comes measurements. I think the data that comes out of the space has always been feeding into meeting those sustainable development goals. So space can support huge lot of measurements. For example, the essential climate variables that we measure, much of that can be done through the space. But of course, there are a lot of essential climate variables which need to be measured on ground and using other technologies. But we make sure that the instruments that we build and put it on board in many spacecrafts actually support some of these measurements. For example, look at the pollution. For example, that we have pollution is a major issue for many cities like Delhi and all that. So we have a method to measure and then report using instruments. We also look at the glacial changes over the periods. Also, here it is. Of course, land use, land cover, which is very important data for the government in terms of how much is the land actually used, agriculture, the forest cover, the residential areas. which are the ones which you can reclaim and use. I think all of this information goes into the ministries and departments through the work that we do. Another example is how you feed into agriculture prediction, business models, etc. For example, the yield estimation every year in different crop seasons is very important for the government to make decisions with regard to export, import, the costing, the pricing of this, collection of how much grains are to be done across many crops. Typically, we do it for 7 crops, and our goal is to go up to almost 25 crops. And the methodology is developed by ISRO using the data that comes out, and it is operationalized through an arm of the Department of Agriculture. And this is very important for us as far as the agriculture sector is concerned. Annually, we have many technologies today, but then space becomes one of the very easiest one to implement this over a period of time. Look at another domain, the fishing. For example, the potential fishing zones advisory is generated every day using the space data. You can measure the oceans, you look at the surface temperature, the wind pattern, the presence of algae there, the sea states, and many other parameters, and we integrate that to find out the fish schools are present in some location or not. And this data can be fed into the society for fish catching people, the boat owners, to go to that location and then catch the fish and then really increase their income. And this is now provided as a service, not yet as an economic or a business activity, which I am discussing with many startups and companies. Why don't we convert that idea into a business activity and then make really money out of it, which is not happening yet, potential possibilities for the future. This is very, very important for us, the water information for the country. The groundwater prospecting is a huge, strategic information for a country. How much is the water available underneath the surface? And you may wonder how you find out water is there under the surface using space data, but there are techniques basically based on the geology of the earth. Look at the terrain and then find out the fissures in the rocks, and then understand where are the channels through which the water goes underneath and where it gets deposited over years. And to find out that, and then where you should go and drill wells, take out the fresh water to service many societies. And this information is important for industries, which you establish in some locations where you are able to find fresh water. And this is catalogued over the years, and this data is with the government, which is a very strategic information. And another information is the surface water information. How many lakes are there across the country. There are lakhs and lakhs of lakes, and you need to catalog them, you need to monitor them, to look at them, the changes that are going to happen over years, and how much is the extent of its utilization, how it's getting destroyed over years. Cities, the lakes are getting covered, and then infrastructure comes on top of it. And how you retain, agricultural water storage mechanisms and then preserve them to help the local administration. And this is very important activity for us. Similarly, the energy, wind, waves, thermal, solar energy, you capture, you find out where it is. You can establish plans for such generation, for example, the rooftop solar facilities, industrial level solar facilities, where you have to establish wind turbines, which are the best locations for it. And this data comes out of the space today, and we are now providing this data for offshore towers and things like that, where you can't put it everywhere. Wind won't happen over a season. You need to study that over periods of time and then find out statistically. This is a place that you can actually produce maximum power. And this data becomes very important. And we have recently released a solar calculator. You have a small app, you can use it and find out. If you put a solar panel on top of your roof, your home's roof, you will be able to produce this much of units of power over years. Look at natural resources monitoring. And we have been doing it with our resource sets, class of satellites over years, which includes the minerals, the forest wealth, the land use cover, and even the forest fire prediction. Every day that we give predictions of, not really predictions, observations of forest fire. And this data goes into the forest department, and they go out and then quench and handle such fires. And this whole thing is now digital. And this data comes out of not only our satellite data, but across the globe. We collect this data and then feed it through a portal to various users. And all the forest officials today in India are trained to handle this data. Similarly, we created a geospatial data approach even during COVID. Possibly many of you may not be aware that how you handled some of it was not across the country. I must tell you that within a short time it couldn't be developed across the country, but at least a few locations we are able to deploy geospatial data-based control for looking at those quarantines and isolation, identification of hospitals where you can go, the materials that can be collected and distributed. All this was done using our geospatial database. Disaster is another major area where we need to address this on a regular basis. India has a interesting condition that we have floods at one location and you will have drought on the other end, and all sort of disasters go around, landslides, floods, drought seasons. And how do you really gather this information for decision makers to act? What we did is that we have created a portal or a decision making framework which is now deployed at the Ministry of Home Affairs. They are able to see it on a dashboard now based on the satellite data. What's happening everywhere in the country? It's actually fed into the decision makers. And this is not accessible to the public. It's actually accessible only to the decision makers to understand what is actually happening when a flood occurs, who is actually going, which are the sources of materials available, who can be asked to go there. And all these inputs, resources available across the country are captured and put there in one place. And the decision makers can actually drive and command them to do and go do that. And the whole of this information comes out of the real-time data, comes out of our satellites and global data that we collect and then process and give. Let me get into yet another domain, which is the space sector reforms and the changes that has been brought out in the last few years in terms of bringing new actors into space. Today, the ISRO is well known for all of you, the Department of Space is the government arm. Under that, we have a research organization called ISRO. And we have another organization called NSIL, the New Space India Limited, which is a public sector undertaking doing business using the knowledge and infrastructure created by ISRO. And we have a new actor called InSpace, which is the regulator, handholder, the promoter for the new actors coming in, like the private companies who are getting into space. And all of this organizing this in 3 different verticals has recently happened, and we enabled this as a very important step. And we also have the industries which are supporting us over the years in building space ecosystem. And we released the space policy, the foreign direct investment policy recently, and also the geospatial policy enabling private actors to come into space in every domain, building rockets, satellites, applications. Now it's open to everyone. And what's the impact? The impact, before we go into the present impact, let me also go into the little bit on the story. And we did recently a study commissioned to somebody, some institution to do a study to find out how much of return of investment has come out of the money that we have put in the space program. Over the years, we have been putting research money only pumping in. Now really, possibly you want even look at what exactly you brought out in terms of benefits, whether it is in terms of direct economic benefits or secondary or tertiary benefits. And one of the study indicated for every 1 rupee that we spend, the return of investment has been almost 2.54 or maybe more, little more. They subsequently revised it. So this is one indicator of what we have been investing, and over the years we have not been investing huge. Annually the budget has always remained very low. I think all of you know that. I don't want to declare it here. But then with that money we were able to do fantastic things in building an infrastructure, satellites and application domain, etc. over the years. But today we are looking at a different thing, that we are seeing emergence of new actors in private. We had only one startup company in space in 2014 and prior to that. And now we have almost 250 companies in different areas, startup companies who are building rockets. They are already launched them, some of them are launched suborbital launches. They are getting ready for launching their orbital launches. And few companies have built satellites and launched on their own from India as well as from abroad. And application companies are also emerging. And we hope that with this, we will be able to scale our share of global economy of space, which is now valued at around $500 billion US. Our contribution is hardly 2% of that. Possibly raise it over a period of time to something like 10%. I think 10% is some justifiable amount that we can claim, but then we need to have a plan of work for it. And this is something which I would like to discuss now. How we can help these private companies to come into space and enable them to work, because technology for space is something very closely guarded. And we are asked now to the ISRO to make it available to the private, handhold them, help them to grow in space technology. So we created a mechanism by which they can come into ISRO, use the facilities, take the technologies at a cost, help the consultation from expert scientists in ISRO to the benefit of the private companies. And this is happening slowly. And we are able to see that the private companies are able to innovate on what ISRO has been doing traditionally. And this change is phenomenal. And not only that, the government decided that we are going to help private companies, but we are also going to create a vision for ourselves as a nation for next 25 years. And Honorable Prime Minister said not only to space program, but also across the domain of the science and technology and planning. He asked all the secretaries, when I was the secretary, that we must build a plan for next 25 years in space and what type of investment that government need to do while we encourage private to work in the commercial space. And this plan we prepared and then presented to him, and we said that in next 25 years we must send an Indian to the moon and land and come back. And possibly we'll ask, what's the fun in sending human to space? Because we have done it long back. Humanity has done it long back, sending somebody to moon and bring back. And what India is going to do? But then the argument has been well laid to tell us that this is not just for showing that we are able to put someone on the moon, but also the development that is going to take place to make it happen is something that we are looking at, not really the final event. What are the developments that we are looking at? We are looking at creating a better rockets which are much more cost effective, much more capable in terms of payloads, reusable, so that we can bring down the cost further. We want to build a space station that will take humans to space and do scientific experiments at microgravity over a period of time to develop certain capability. We would like to explore moon and Mars and other planetary objects in a continuous manner so that the scientific talent who are available here really feed into the whole ecosystem. I think all of these are part of that vision. Though the ultimate goal of putting man on the moon could be something which is more symbolic in nature. I think this has been approved now, and all the funding required for that also has been granted in the recently. The building of the rocket, the new launch pad, the missions to go to moon, Chandrayaan 4 and 5, the Bharati Antarikshya Station, and all of this got approved in the recent times, and we have started building that in the ISRO ecosystem, which is funded by government, while we work on the operational side of what we have been doing in the past in the private. And slowly, the whole work that ISRO used to do in the government is now moving to the private. We also want to make sure that what we develop in ISRO, the space station, for example, the Bharati Antarikshya Station, it's not just a symbolic thing, and we want to make sure that it is utilized by the community, not only in India but across the globe. We want to look at how research component is developed. So we are working with institutions in India, research laboratories, which includes medicine synthesis, materials research, microgravity research. In fact, this is not hugely available in India right now. We need to work on it and develop it. While we develop the space station, we need to develop this ecosystem as well. So we are looking at global collaboration to find out who are potential collaborators to come into microgravity research and use this capability maybe long term from now. And this is something very important for us to ensure that this research work or investment that we make in space station is better utilized. In terms of funding, possibly I don't want to spend much time about it, but this numbers really shows a huge jump that traditionally been funding ISRO. We were at around 10,000 crores. Now this is the first time that we have a very large amount of funding visible for long duration, which shows a possibility for industries to come in and invest in terms of large scale production capability. It's one topic which I am post-retirement I am looking at how to create that aspect in India in collaboration with investors and industries in India to scale up the production capability which is lacking in India for rockets and satellites. Let me look at some of the other domains which is more into the policy, regulation, law and global activities with respect to space. Though I discussed till now are more of technological capabilities, but we are operating in a global scenario. Space is never limited to a regional issue. It is more of a global issue. And how you really work together with actors across the globe in this. And right at the beginning in the space that we have been part of this global movement and the type of instruments that we have established across the globe, across various countries, almost 287, I believe, MOUs, agreements, implementing arrangements with many nations we have done in various domains. It's in the domain of technology development, in terms of capacity building, joint instruments development, missions, scientific work. I will give a little bit of examples of what we are doing. And we also are part of the United Nations movement in terms of the conventions and treaties that we have signed. We also signed recently the Artemis Accord also, so that we are part of that movement of looking at moon and related economy in a bigger manner so that we can work together in the global space capability. So we don't want to be isolated. We want to be part of this movement to work for the global good. While space is a domain where it's possible to find domains that we can work together. Even those countries in conflicts are talking to each other only in the domain of space. You know that. So we would like to make use of that as a tool of diplomacy. And historically, we have been benefited by this work. You know that we have started the space program. Vikram Sarabhai was the person during the times of the Cold War. We were able to bring in US, Russia, France, and Japan to come together to help us to launch rockets. And they supplied instruments, they supplied the payloads, the ground equipments to us to make that happen from India. And we dedicated the Tumpa Equatorial Rocket Launching Station to United Nations for conducting instruments, flights in sounding rockets, and hundreds of launches took place in 1980s and 70s. And that type of collaboration existed. And not only that we worked with Russia and US and France and Japan in the last so many years to create capability within India also. And we had many joint missions. And we are continuing that tradition of working with many nations. Even now we have connection with the Russians in terms of the Gaganyaan and NAVIC, and with the US for missions for the Gaganyaan mission. And of course the launch is yet to take place, and many other scientific missions that we are working together. France, of course, France is one nation that has helped us in a great way in terms of propulsion. Our first of liquid engines came out of the collaboration of joint development. The Vikas engine, the Viking engine, was jointly developed by Indians and French people in France, and they used it engines alternatively in their rockets. And cryogenic engine technology was developed based on the Russian engine that they supplied to us in the past. And similar collaboration is currently being discussed across various domains. Not only in the spacefaring domain, spacefaring nations, but also in the nations which are just emerging into the space area. We would like to collaborate and work, which includes the third world countries who are aspiring to be the space players. India would like to help and encourage them to grow. I think this is a strategy that we have taken, not really to become a big brother, but actually a person or a country which will be able to help them to grow in the space technology and knowledge and applications, so that it actually becomes a potential collaborator possible in the future. One of the few of the joint missions that we have undertaken in the recent times is something very, very important. Possibly you know that the NASA, ISRO synthetic aperture radar is one of the costliest ever satellite that is built by the collaboration between NASA and India. Here the radar side, the L-band radar came from US, the S-band radar from India. The spacecraft is built and integrated by India and going to be launched using our rocket. And the satellite is now fully ready and tested and waiting for the launch. The Trishna is another satellite which we have now conceived and working with France, the CNES, the French National Space Agency, and to build this satellite. We are now currently organizing joint conferences. The technology contracts have been issued, and in another 2 years of time, the satellite will be built. And this satellite is going to observe the Earth in the thermal region, which will give you huge information related to climate change and related issues. And we have signed an MOU or agreement to launch moon mission with Japan called the LUPEX. Then the G20 satellite, which is recently announced by Prime Minister to as a satellite which is meant for climate and weather studies across G20 nations. Of course, it's not limited to G20 nations, it's across the entire world, but then this data will be given free to all these nations. Similar, NASA ISRO synthetic aperture radar is, I don't want to spend time because of the time not available, but this is a fantastic satellite which gives you the global cover in just 12 days, and it gives you data in such a high resolution. You are able to measure the tectonic movements, the water pressure, the climate change, the heating, the forest cover, the glacier changes, and so much of information will come out of this on a periodic manner, which is just 12 days. You will be able to update this data globally, and such a fantastic satellite. Hopefully it goes well and work well. I think that all of us have to bless it. We have been working with European Union very well. Most of the institutions in the European Union are connected to us, and this work continues in various domains. Similarly, we work with many other nations, especially the nations which are aspiring to learn technology. We have been helping them with the data, the satellite data, which we have gathered and collected in these nations. We put them in portals and help them, you can use this data. Whenever a prime minister goes to these nations, we make sure this data is made available and handed over to them by him as a gesture, a free delivery for us, and establish ground stations, data reception centers in those countries to enable them to use space data for their governance and use, which is a gift from our country. Let me conclude my last session. Possibly, did I cross my time? I believe. But that was not 30 minutes, of course. Okay. See, in the global front that we have been working with UN COPUS, UN COPUS, the United Nations Committee for Peaceful Use of Outer Space. And this domain is very, very important, how you really come together and discuss the space as a global entity and how do you really work with that. In the beginning of UN COPUS itself, Sarabhai was one of the founding members, India was a founding member, and we have been working with UN COPUS over the last so many years and in creating its own legal framework, in discussing issues and debating over the period of time. But UN COPUS is also evolving with more nations coming in, having all signed all the treaties in the last so many years. UN COPUS now looking at the global issues in space in much deeper manner. And there are a lot of contentious issues coming up in space, primarily because of the large number of satellites now going to space. Thousands of satellites go, the space debris becomes an issue. Legal framework in terms of, for example, the dangers associated with space is becoming all the more important because space is now a strategic asset for most of the nations that is used in confrontations and conflicts. And there are observations happening, looking at dangers of satellites, the ASAT, and many other things are happening across that. Long-term sustainability become an issue. Potential hazards to Earth and how humanity will survive in terms of a collision. All these issues are being discussed, and how do you really formulate guidelines and policies is becoming a top agenda while we discuss. Of course, on the treaties, we have signed all the treaties, including the UN treaties as well as the Debris Coordination Committee treaties. And we also work with so many organizations across the world in various domains, some of them looking at Earth observation, some of them at the communication, some of the are country-specific organizations. Navigation, timing and services organizations, ICG, frequency coordination, and many other fora. We are part of it, and we host these committee meetings, and we become part of such activities over many years. And these are very important activities to create people with knowledge and skill for negotiation and such activities, which is very important in the space sector. But in the future, the issues in space are going to be much more difficult. For example, the domain of space, the cost of access to space is now becoming lesser because of the emergence of SpaceX. And this has disrupted the entire ecosystem, not only in India, but also you can see the problems in Europe and many other nations. The cost of access becoming extremely low, and SpaceX grabbing all the launch possibilities across the globe. And how do you really face it? And there are no solutions coming from other nations, though everyone is trying. Similarly, the constellations, which are mega constellations, are creating so much of issues in terms of the dangers, the communication, the scientific work that we are doing in space, and the ability to launch safely and, for example, the human space missions, etc. And space is now slowly emerging as a tool for handling conflict in terms of communication, in terms of surveillance, signals, and data. And how do you really regulate them? And how you can arrange damage, the collateral damage to some of them in case of a serious conflict. And how do you potentially provide space mining and other resources, and what are the guidelines that need to be created over a period of time, though it's not yet emerged as a potential possibility now, but then over a period of time this is likely to emerge. Country and the nations claiming on some objects, and how do you really face it, and how do you look at it. There was a presentation yesterday to us. And creation of new space stations. Of course, ISS is going to retire, and there are plenty of space stations in planning going around. And when space stations come up, the moon economy, the Mars economy are being discussed, and who are going to be a part of such a journey? I think these questions are being addressed very seriously in the space domain now. As far as India is concerned, there are plenty of questions which we look at very seriously while we plan all of this. Primarily, that secured access to space is very important for us, because for launches we can't go anywhere. very important mission that we have to do. It must be done from India. So our capability to launch must be preserved and protected. We should be able to build whatever we want to do, and we should be able to serve the country in the manner that we have been doing in the past. So which are the points which will be choking us in days to come is something which we need to identify, create the capability in the country, and then go forward. There is a need to collaborate, but there is a need to remain independent. I think these two are now coming as a point of discussion many a times. Similarly, the strategic nature of the space is now becoming a very important topic for all of us. Now the ability to communicate and provide internal services all across the globe is really making changes in which the forces that are operating are able to do it much better and effectively. And this, as a nation, where we still don't have that capability. Global communication is still a capability not with us now. It is still a regional communication. Whether we need to build a constellation for ourselves globally to handle such issues is, and how do you really sustain as a business model is a question that we need to address. Similarly, the observation capability, to look at all the assets that we have created, who is actually watching them, and say that they are protected and prevented from any damage at times, and what type of infrastructure that we need to create. And recently there was a dome announced by one of the nations that we are going to create a space dome to protect against missile invasion. And when such things happen, and how we will look at it. I think these questions are some of the important issues in strategic domain, whether we need to invest in this, we need to create capability over a period of time. So let me conclude saying that we have done well over the period in space. Last 60 years, we have been able to develop a capability at very, very low budget resources. With respect to country, I think this has been a wonderful experience within the organization to see that growth. I have been there for the last 40 years, so I've been part of the journey out of the 60 years, I am there for the 40 years, so I can confidently tell you, I've seen journeys from failures to success, from small scales to large scale, growing in size and capability over a period of time. I'm really proud to be part of that journey. But the challenges in the future are many in terms of those points which I discussed. Really becoming globally competitive, really becoming self-sustaining. In terms of the business opportunity, how do you really allow commercial actors to come in to scale up the whole activity? And how do you really become part of the global journey? I think all of this agenda has been put up very, very clearly. And I would like to say that though we have set some goals like this, building better rockets, space stations, manned landing, I think all of these are not symbolic for us. It is not symbolic at all for us. They are all goals that we want to set for ourselves so that we work on a higher level of goals, not really be walking in small steps at this moment. We would like to be on par with other nations, and slowly the nation is emerging. Today we stand at an economic activity level at around 4th place, possibly. I think those points will be discussed. We will be graduating ourselves to a higher level. At that moment, if you are not able to claim our place in space, I think we will be doing injustice to ourselves. So it's very important for us to have such vision, though it may appear today critical of some of this. I would like to conclude that the further frontiers in India in space, which includes part of the global exploration regime, be part of the understanding the universe, and also to become an active player for catalyst for economic growth, because space can contribute to that. Also to be never to be left behind with other nations, and also to inspire, enthuse young people to come into domains of technology, science, and to be catalyst for making a global change that we believe that through science and technology only this nation can really prosper in terms of economic activity, and that requires some examples of inspiration, and I believe space gives you that type of inspiration for younger people to come in and work. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
I described the Oxford India Forum as a tenacious and humble attempt to get people like you to share their grey cells in motion with us. And I really extend my heartfelt gratitude from our friends at Fuel. And